You're welcome back. Now let's discuss project management. And we've been talking about the infrastructural gap in Africa, in Nigeria, as a deterrent to a whole lot of things, development, logistics, and all. And they say that Africa is home to the world's fastest growing economies, yet that infrastructural gap, which has been placed at about needs funding of about $170 billion annually to close. Where are we going to get that from? So there was a summit recently, and leaders there agreed that the real challenge is actually not finance, but it is poorly prepared projects. We'll delve into that in a bit, but first of all, let's talk about this Nigeria's infrastructural gap and some facts coming out from there. Gap there is about $3 trillion that needs to be spent over the next 30 years if we want to close that gap. 30% of estimated 200,000 kilometers of road are paved. Housing deficit we see is in place at about 28 million units. Less than 16% of road construction projects finished successfully. From reports reaching us between 2000 and 2018. Poor project execution reportedly cost the government an estimated 2 trillion naira. An academic paper also shows that from 2022, that there are 41% of reported public sector projects that were successful based on timelines, budget, and specification. That's 41%, less than 50%. Is it even up to 41%? I wonder. 60% of road construction projects affected by flood-prone areas, they suffer from foundation failures. So shouldn't that have been taken into consideration from the initiation of that? 45% of project delays in urban areas are linked to pollution-related issues. Let's discuss this here with the Managing Director of Project Management Institute in Sub-Saharan Africa, Mr. George Asamani. Mr. Asamani, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, and good morning to the viewers as well. Thank you.
So let me start by asking if you agree that the issue why we have this widening infrastructural gap in Africa, in Nigeria, is not really because of lack of finance, but poor project management.
I think there are several reasons for the infrastructure gap, but definitely one of the reasons why we're struggling from the point of view of infrastructure development is project management capability. And within project management capability, I can tell you that some of our partners who actually fund projects have said specifically, for instance, project preparation is by far one of the most painful areas within the space. And when I say painful areas, what that means is that this is what is not being done, which enables projects, including infrastructure projects, to be successfully run.
So is this because of lack of knowledge, oversight, or some kind of corrupt acts?
It's probably a combination, depending on who's running the project. But when we talk about project preparation, what we're talking about is essentially doing your homework on the project. Because yes, we say that funding may be a challenge, or we're a price-sensitive economy. But actually, there are many projects that have the funds ready. But the people who have those funds, whether we're talking about governments or development banks or companies, they will not release those funds for good reasons, because the project homework hasn't been done. In other words, the project preparation hasn't been done to prove that this is a bankable project. And what that means is in-depth, rigorous analysis on risk management, on financials, making sure that the financials are modeled based on realistic project scenarios. So there's a whole host of critical areas that have to be looked at in a lot of detail before funding can be released and for a project to run successfully. Even if somebody decides to fund a project, a development bank, or whatever the case, if the project preparation hasn't been done well and the project starts, at some point we're going to come into difficulties. That's why you see projects that should be taking 3 years are taking 8 years. Projects that should be building roads or saving, women and children for specific initiatives, those outcomes are not being seen. So project preparation absolutely is a critical part of the challenge at the moment.
So would it be, because in the case of public sector, for instance, Nigeria, we hear loans being taken and all of that. And I think the funding is released once the agreement is done. Even if it's being released in tranches, it comes.
Yes.
But sometimes we still don't see the end of those projects. I mean, between 2000 and 2008, just about 41% of projects in Nigeria met the timelines and all of that. And even in some cases, when it seems it's been done, when you talk about sustainability, that paints another picture. We're ahead of flood.
Yes.
These things are supposed, I mean, you go to an area and you see a good road, there's no drainage. So that's that's going to be short-lived. Is it the persons involved, or is it, I mean, I really don't understand, because do they have the wrong people managing the projects?
That's what that last sentence you said, or that question, is very, very possible, and I'll tell you why. You just said, do they have the wrong people managing the projects? There are 2.6 million people in Sub-Saharan Africa that call themselves a project professional. That's a project manager, project officer, project whatever the case. 2.6 million people. Out of that, less than 5% are actually certified or qualified, and it's closer to about 2 or 3%. So think about it. You have people who will call themselves a project manager managing project. If they're not really qualified or certified, then what does that mean from a project success point of view? So you talked about that road that's been built, the tarmac is there, but the drainage isn't. Potentially, it could be because the wrong people are in place. So that's one of the reasons why PMI, and my team specifically, the Africa team, that's why we're absolutely focused on supporting governments, supporting academic institutions and regional bodies, actually to have the right people on projects. So we're all about upskilling the region for that specific reason, to have better, more qualified project managers executing especially these key projects.
So why do I think that qualification is on the one hand, intention is on the other hand? Why do I have that in my head?
Yeah, that's a good question. Hopefully if somebody has invested so much of their time in being qualified, then they will also, of course, have the intention. Because
they want to make quick money. Because I mean, you can make quick money and just do whatever you want on the surface and live, even though you're certified.
I think a lot of people are making quick money, and that's why we see that out of everybody who calls themselves a project manager, only a tiny minority are actually qualified. So the quick money people are not investing in themselves to be qualified. The quick money people are just slapping on the label and running projects. And unfortunately, we see the impact of that with project failures or project delays. I think those people who've actually invested invested in themselves properly to be qualified, those are the people who are not only qualified, by paper, but also spend time interacting with community, other project managers, learning, what is the latest, not only local trends, but global trends, keeping up with thought leadership. Those people who invest in themselves comprehensively are running projects better.
So when you talk about this building capacity on the continent, is that the four walls of the school? Is it certificate? Is it, as you said, interaction with the community?
Sure. So when I talk about PMI building capacity in the continent, what I mean is making sure or helping to make sure that we have enough qualified project managers on the continent. What is enough? It's definitely way more than the 2% of everybody who's calling themselves a project manager right now. And how we do that is that we partner with governments, we partner with companies or private sector, partner with academic institutions. So for instance, with government, the intention or the model that we have with government is twofold. First of all, working with government to make sure that people internally within government have the training and the knowledge and the thought leadership on what project management is and the best practice internally within government, because of course they are heavily responsible for a lot of projects in countries and in the region. But outside of government, we also partner with government from a policy development point of view, and also potentially even a pricing and subsidies point of view, so that the general public, there's a way for them, or it becomes easier for them also to gain the skills, because
you must have had a lot of conversations with Minister David Umahi and Wike of FCT. These are project men in Nigeria.
That's fantastic. I haven't spoken to them myself. It'll be great to speak with them. And if they're watching, David, I'm looking forward to meeting. But these are people that are key decision makers. These are people who, of course, are making decisions that impact the trajectory of Nigeria. And we're speaking with similar people all across Africa. I just talked about policy. So, for instance, in South Africa, we're partnered with the Ministry of Infrastructure and Public Works, specifically the regulator for construction projects. And we're partnered with them in a way that actually, for anybody to be able to run construction projects in South Africa, they have to be registered with these people who also use PMI standards. All
right, Mr. George Asamani, thank you so much. Wish you the best.
Thank you.
And of course, the capacity building is very important so that our projects will cost less and last longer.
Absolutely.
It's very necessary. Managing Director, Project Management Institute, Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We head to the global space.